Prisons were built to contain society's monsters, but what happens when the prison becomes the monster? Midway's 2004 cult classic, The Suffering, doesn't just lock you in a cell with horrors, it makes you question whether you're one of them. This is a game where the walls scream, the inmates are long dead but still suffering, and your own mind might be the deadliest weapon of all. Decades later, The Suffering remains a masterclass in psychological terror, a game that weaponizes its setting, its monsters, and even its moral choices to leave you as haunted as its death row protagonist. Let's dig into why this forgotten gem still chills and what modern horror could learn from its brutality, creativity, and unforgettable creature design. Most horror games thrive on the unknown, the fog of Silent Hill, the cold void of space and Dead Space. But The Suffering does something more claustrophobic. It traps you in a place already designed to crush hope. Carnate Island's penitentiary isn't just eerie, it's oppressive. Flickering lights turn every hallway into a strobe-lit nightmare, faint sobs drift through the vents, leaving you to wonder, are they ghosts? Or just the echo of your own guilt. Then there's Torque. Convicted of murdering his wife and 2 children, his memories are as fractured as the prison around him. And the genius here, the game never confirms if the horrors are supernatural or just in his head. This is horror that earns its dread. It lives in the quiet, the way a noose sways in an empty cell block, or how shadows twitch just outside your flashlight's beam. True horror isn't what's lurking in the dark, it's what we bring into it. But Carnate's horrors aren't just in your head, they're flesh and blood. And the flesh here, it remembers how it died. The Suffering's monsters aren't just creative, they're symbolic. Every syringe, bullet hole, and gas-sweeping wound is a brutal reminder that the state-sanctioned death is far messier than we like to admit, and history backs that up. Take the Marksman. Its rifles fused to its back like a firing squad's collective guilt. In 1879, Utah's execution of Wallace Wilkerson went horrifically wrong. The shooters missed his heart, and he bled out over 27 agonizing minutes as the crowd watched. The Suffering channels this. The Marksman doesn't just shoot you, it reloads with the echoes of botched justice. Then there's the Mainliner, a walking indictment of lethal injection's humane myth. In 1989, Texas inmate Stephen McCoy convulsed so violently during his execution that a witness fainted. His back arched, chest heaved, officials later admitted the drugs were administered too rapidly. The Mainliner, syringes for fingers, veins that throb with poison, a nightmare born of paperwork and anesthesia gone wrong. But maybe the most primal horror, one that scratches at our lizard brains, is the Burrower, a creature born from our ancient fear of being buried alive. History is full of premature burials, safety coffins with bells, Angelo Hayes waking up in his grave after a failed hanging and digging himself out. The Burrower embodies that terror, a corpse in a sack, chains for hands, clawing back to the surface. The earth trembles before it erupts in soil and bone. Even today, we still get it wrong. This isn't just a monster, it's a gravestone for the unjustly condemned, the dead that weren't ready to die. These aren't just hypotheticals, they're real stories, real screams. The Suffering doesn't invent nightmares, it remixes history into flesh. The truth is always scarier than fiction, and this game knows it. The Suffering doesn't just throw monsters at you, it makes every enemy a physical consequence of state-sanctioned death. These aren't creatures born from fantasy, they're born from torture. Slayers are the executioner's blade made flesh. Severed stumps bring blood as they sprint, their jagged arm blades mimic decapitation. Every attack feels like your own head might roll next. Mainliners stagger and twitch with syringes jammed into their flesh. They don't just stab, they inject. The way they shudder, like they're reliving the botched injections that inspired them. Noosemen dangle from ceilings like twisted marionettes, heads snap to the side. Their ropes whip around like living limbs, reminders that not all hangings end cleanly. Burrowers are wrapped in burial sacks, clawing their way up from the dirt. Chains bind their limbs like they were condemned and buried alive. When they erupt from the earth, you're not just fighting a monster, you're fighting someone who never got to die properly. Marksmen carry rifles fused into their backs, walking death squads whose bullets echo historical botched jobs. They don't aim, they execute. And their reloads? Cold, methodical, like it's not personal, just procedure. Festers are swollen, oozing nightmares rotting from within. Rats burst from their guts mid-fight. They're not just infected, they are the infection, echoing the horror of being consumed alive. Infernas are the embodiment of corrupted innocence. These spectral entities manifest as young girls in Puritan dresses, often clutching dolls. Their design draws inspiration from the historical accounts of witch trials where false accusations led to the execution of innocents. In the game, the Inferno's presence is often shown by eerie giggling and fiery footprints, adding to their unsettling nature. They are formidable adversaries, capable of reviving from ashes if not properly destroyed, symbolizing the lingering consequences of deceit and hysteria. Why does this work? Because it hits deeper than gore. Tying monsters to execution methods turns every fight into a reckoning. You're not shooting zombies, you're confronting how civilizations kill and how those methods don't just end lives, they distort them. Other games use metaphor. The Suffering uses history. Its monsters are born from real-world cruelty. That makes them harder to shake off because deep down, you know this all actually happened. But while the male factors reflect the horrors of execution, The bosses in The Suffering go even deeper. They aren't just shaped by death, they are the living embodiment of everything that made Carnot Island a nightmare long before the monsters arrived. These are the architects of suffering. Hargrave, a sadistic corrections officer, represents the institutional cruelty that pervades Carnot Island. His descent into madness and his role in executing prisoners without due process mirror the corrupt systems that dehumanize both inmates and staff. Facing Hargrave forces players to confront the horrors of unchecked authority and the thin line between order and chaos. Dr. Killjoy, the ghostly psychiatrist, embodies the perversion of medical ethics. His obsession with curing Torque through archaic and torturous methods reflects the historical mistreatment of mental health patients. Killjoy's presence challenges players to consider the fine line between treatment and torture, and how institutions can become instruments of suffering. Horus, executed by the Electrochair for murdering his wife, is a manifestation of overwhelming guilt. His electrified form and tormented demeanor illustrate the internal punishment that surpasses any state-imposed sentence. Horus's interactions with Torque serve as a mirror, prompting introspection about personal responsibility and the weight of remorse. Hermes, the former executioner who took his own life in the gas chamber, represents the personification of death. His gaseous form and relentless pursuit of Torque symbolize the inescapable nature of mortality and the consequences of one's actions. Hermes' character forces players to grapple with the morality of capital punishment and the psychological toll it takes on those who administer it. The ultimate boss, a monstrous embodiment of Torque's inner turmoil, brings the game's themes full circle. This creature, bearing Torque's likeness, represents the culmination of guilt, rage, and denial. The battle against this entity is not just physical, but symbolic, challenging players to confront the darkest parts of the human psyche and the possibility of redemption. Each boss in The Suffering is meticulously crafted to reflect the complex interplay between personal demons and systemic failures. Through these encounters, the game compels players to face uncomfortable truths about justice, punishment, and the human capacity for both cruelty and remorse. The Suffering doesn't just ask if you can survive Carnot Island, it asks what kind of person you become doing it. Throughout the game, you'll encounter survivors, other guards and inmates. Some are begging for help, others might deserve what's coming. And in these moments, The Suffering hands you the knife and walks away. No moral pop-up, no karma meter, just your choice and whatever comes after. And yes, there are 3 endings, good, bad, and neutral, but they don't feel like arbitrary reward tiers. They feel like a reflection, like the island itself is keeping score, not with a counter, but with whispers, visions, and how Torque sees himself. And that's the genius. It doesn't scold you, it reflects you. Compared to something like The Last of Us Part 2, where you're forced to empathize with certain characters whether you want to or not, The Suffering does something braver. It lets you be a monster, and just live with it. No justification, no apology. It's not binary either. You might make mostly good choices, but let one person die out of fear or convenience, and the game remembers. The Suffering trusts the player to make meaning from their own choices, and that's what makes them matter. Surreal Software, the minds behind The Suffering, began their journey in 1995, crafting titles like Draken and The Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring. Their innovative approach to horror culminated in the Suffering series. However, the studio's trajectory was disrupted when Midway Games acquired them in 2004. Midway's subsequent bankruptcy in 2009 led to Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment purchasing Surreal Software. Post-acquisition, Surreal Software was merged into Monolith Productions in 2010. Monolith, known for titles like Fear and Condemned, continued the legacy of immersive horror experiences. Yet, in a surprising turn of events, Warner Bros. Games announced the closure of Monolith Productions in February 2025, citing strategic realignments and a focus on key franchises. This closure not only marked the end of an era for a studio renowned for its atmospheric storytelling, but also highlighted the volatile nature of the gaming industry. The demise of such studios underscores the challenges faced by innovative developers in an industry increasingly driven by blockbuster franchises and risk-averse strategies. The Suffering's inability to evolve into a lasting franchise wasn't due to a lack of creativity or audience interest, but rather the hectic corporate shifts and financial instabilities that plagued its parent companies. In today's gaming landscape, where indie titles often explore niche narratives, The Suffering might have found a more receptive environment, albeit with limitations in budget and scope. The legacy of The Suffering serves as a testament to the potential of horror games that dare to intertwine gameplay with profound psychological themes. Its journey, though marred by corporate upheavals, remains a poignant chapter in gaming history. The Suffering was never just a game. It was a warning, a descent into the darkest corners of institutional cruelty, personal guilt, and the monsters we create to survive them. It didn't just scare us, it implicated us. And yet, despite its brilliance, The Suffering has largely been forgotten. Not because it failed, but because the industry around it did. In a world where horror games often rely on jump scares and gore, The Suffering dared to delve into the psychological, the symbolic, and the morally complex. It challenged players to confront not just external threats, but their own choices and the consequences that followed. Today, as the gaming industry continues to evolve, the legacy of The Suffering serves as a testament to the power of storytelling, atmosphere, and moral ambiguity in interactive media. It reminds us that true horror lies not in the monsters we face, but in the truths we uncover about ourselves.